Before we dive in, I want you to hear this clearly because this is something very few people ever talk about. You might think that when you finally give up on an avoidant, when you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop trying to fix everything, they'll just walk away unaffected. You might convince yourself that they won't notice, that they won't care. You tell yourself your absence means nothing because for so long they acted like your presence didn't matter either. But here's the truth nobody ever told you. The moment an avoidant senses that you've truly given up, not pretending, not playing games, not posting cryptic messages to get a reaction, but genuinely stepping back, something primal is triggered inside them, something they have been suppressing for months or even years, and their response isn't what you might expect. In this discussion, we'll uncover the biggest challenge people face with avoidance. Why do they pull away when you show care, but come closer when you stop trying? Why does your effort push them away while your absence jolts them awake? Why does letting go provoke the reaction you've wanted all along? Most importantly, we'll break down step by step what actually happens inside an avoidant mind when they realize you've stopped fighting for the connection. The first thing that occurs is internal panic. And you need to understand this clearly. They will deny it at every level. You won't see it on their face. They won't announce it. They won't suddenly reach out to confess. But inside their nervous system, it is utter chaos. This is crucial because most people assume avoidants don't care, that they walk away easily, that your absence feels like relief. That's not the reality. Their internal experience is far more complex, far more human, and far more emotional than anything they show outwardly. For avoidance, the belief that you'll always be there is the foundation of their emotional strategy. Their entire approach depends on one assumption. You won't leave, you won't walk away, you won't give up. They expect you'll always be available, waiting, ready to reconnect when they feel comfortable. You are their safety net, the cushion they often take for granted until it's gone. When they sense that the energy has shifted and they feel you're truly letting go, their inner world fractures. Avoidants don't fear intimacy the way people think. They fear losing control. They fear exposure. They fear vulnerability. The deepest fear they rarely acknowledge, even to themselves, is the fear of abandonment. They push others away to protect themselves from being abandoned first. Yet, paradoxically, they crave connection. They just struggle to tolerate it. When they suddenly feel the absence of the person who made them feel safe, they don't respond calmly. They react with shock. You might notice it in subtle ways, checking your social media more often, messages taking on a careful or unusual tone, or an altered energy you can sense. Something inside them wakes up, that realization, this person might actually be done with me, flips their inner world upside down. Avoidants are comfortable when they believe you are chasing them, when they sense emotional investment from you, when they know they have space to push and pull. It's their comfort zone. But when they feel the string has been cut, it's like cold water hitting their nervous system. They've lost their buffer, the person who gave them stability without asking for much. That realization is shocking. Avoidants don't react logically in these moments. They don't think, I should reach out, or I should express my feelings. Instead, they overanalyze, overthink, and spiral. They replay conversations, examine their behavior, question whether they misread your energy, or wonder if they said something wrong. They panic because fixing it would require exposing themselves emotionally. The first reaction is always internal conflict. It's the tug of war between their need for independence and their desire for connection. Your stepping away quietly forces them to confront this tension directly. They experience the emptiness they created, and the shock of it hits hard. Avoidants convince themselves they are fine on their own, that solitude is comforting. But when someone important withdraws, The loss is deeply felt, even if they refuse to show it. You may notice subtle curiosity, casual questions, bringing up memories indirectly, trying to gauge your emotional state. They can't ask directly because being straightforward feels like vulnerability. Many people mistake their lack of pursuit as indifference. But avoidance doesn't chase because doing so exposes them emotionally. Reaching out feels like standing in a storm with no shelter. When you remove yourself, the storm comes anyway. Your absence occupies their mind in a way your presence never did, because now there's a genuine threat of loss. The shock is not just emotional, it's physiological. Avoidants regulate emotions through distance. That distance keeps them calm, but when you step back, they lose their emotional anchor. They feel suppressed anxieties, unacknowledged needs, and denied attachment all at once. Initially, they may retreat further, overwhelmed. Then subtly, they might reappear. Liking a post, responding to a neutral message, small signs of life that seem insignificant but are deliberate. These are strategies to re-establish connection without admitting desire, a way to pull you back in without revealing their emotional hand. When they truly realize you've given up, they finally feel what you have felt, the uncertainty, fear of loss, longing, and confusion. That shock forces a brief self-awareness, a glimpse of their own patterns. Their attachment system activates, memories sharpen, longing intensifies, and the need for connection overtakes their self-protective instincts. This shift doesn't happen in dramatic ways. It doesn't appear as immediate panic, grand apologies, or sudden pursuit. It starts as genuine, disorienting confusion. Avoidants spend their emotional lives assuming you will always be there. They believe, no matter the distance or coldness, you will wait. You will remain open, offering, and holding space. But when they sense you are truly stepping away, that assumption shatters. Confusion sets in. Internal panic combines with physiological dysregulation. Their mind races, their body feels tension, and the absence of your presence strikes them in ways they weren't prepared for. This is the moment that begins to awaken them. It's not about manipulation or games. It's about raw human response. For the first time, they feel the gravity of what they might lose. They recognize that emotional availability is a gift they have taken for granted. Even if they don't voice it, even if they hide it, something deep inside shifts. They realize they are not as okay without you as they once believed. Your genuine withdrawal pierces their emotional armor. They feel disoriented, caught between their instinct to protect themselves and their growing awareness of what your absence truly means. Avoidants don't react logically, but they react. They may test boundaries, send subtle messages, or engage indirectly. They may analyze, replay, and overthink. But underneath it all, the core fear of losing you, emerges stronger than their fear of intimacy. This is the turning point. The energy you projected by letting go, calm, detached, non-reactive, is what shakes their world. That moment, when they understand your absence is real, creates a crack in their protective shell, an opening they rarely experience. They confront, even briefly, the consequences of their distancing and suppression. The internal shock is profound because avoidance lives in controlled emotional distance. When that distance is disrupted, their physiological and emotional regulation falters. They feel attachment they have denied, anxiety they've avoided, and longing they've suppressed. That combination creates confusion, tension, and subtle attempts to reconnect. It is not immediate resolution. It's the first recognition of loss, the first internal confrontation with vulnerability they often hide even from themselves. When they realize your absence is genuine, the cognitive dissonance between "I want you" and "I must stay safe" intensifies. Your quiet decision to stop chasing triggers an awakening in their nervous system, one that forces awareness of their own emotional reliance on you. The subtle tension, curiosity, and small interactions that follow are reflections of this awakening. It is the first time avoidance experiences the emotional consequence of distance as acutely as you did. This confusion, the subtle attempts to monitor you, the overthinking, the inner panic, and physiological dysregulation, these are all signs that they are processing, not ignoring. Avoidants are complex, protective, and cautious, but your absence bypasses the walls they built. The realization that you may slip away permanently destabilizes them, challenges their long-held assumptions, and forces a confrontation with feelings they are unused to managing. And you know why? Because that's what always happens. The anxious partner, the overgiver, the emotionally present one in the relationship, you always go back, you always try again, you always reach out. But when you truly give up, when your heart checks out, when you stop being available in all the ways they subconsciously depended on, it sends them into an emotional state they've never had a map for. They don't know what to do because for the first time, the dynamic they thought was predictable is now unfamiliar. The roles have flipped and their internal system goes, wait, something's off, something just changed. They feel it before they understand it. This confusion starts with a disruption to their sense of control. Avoidance may not appear controlling outwardly, but emotionally they rely heavily on predictability. Predictability equals safety. Predictability equals comfort. Predictability means they don't have to confront their own vulnerability. And you were predictable. Your care, your effort, your patience created the emotional framework they leaned on, even when they pushed you away. The moment they sense that framework has shifted or disappeared, their internal equilibrium cracks. Suddenly, the silence they once found peaceful feels uneasy. The space they previously needed doesn't feel safe anymore. The distance they insisted on now feels unfamiliar, cold, and too expansive. That creates internal tension they can't ignore. If you've noticed avoidance becoming strangely irritable, unusually quiet, or oddly restless when they feel they've lost control of an emotional dynamic, this is exactly why. The confusion begins as discomfort. They start noticing you in ways they never did before, often without realizing it. They check your status, your online activity, your posts, hover on your stories. They may not even realize they're searching for reassurance. They just feel compelled to look, compelled to see if the emotional door is still open. But when they realize you're not reaching out, not chasing, not responding like before, the confusion deepens. They don't understand what changed. They don't comprehend why your distance feels real, solid, and permanent. Avoidants aren't comfortable with uncertainty. They avoid emotional intensity because they fear being overwhelmed, yet being cut off from emotional safety and predictability overwhelms them in an entirely different way. It forces them to feel emotions they've been avoiding. Avoidance' entire attachment system is built on managing overwhelm. They create space when threatened, detach when feelings rise, retreat when emotions surge. But now, the source of emotion is external. It comes from you stepping away. They don't know how to regulate it. They don't know how to soothe themselves when the loss feels like it's coming from the outside. So they enter a peculiar phase where they intellectualize everything. Avoidants always try to reason their way out of discomfort. They overanalyze, replay conversations, revisit moments with you, and attempt to pinpoint what triggered your shift. They begin to ask themselves the question they've long avoided: did I push too far? Confusion turns into doubt. They question their assumptions, their decisions, the choices that led to the disconnect. And avoidants hate doubt because doubt leads to vulnerability, self-reflection, and the terrifying realization that maybe they actually cared more than they allowed themselves to admit. So instead of reaching out, they watch, observe, and monitor. They try to understand your emotional state indirectly, analyzing your tone, the posts you like, the things you share, looking for clues that you might still be open. As much as avoidance fears closeness, they need connection. They need intimacy but don't know how to sustain it without feeling overwhelmed. When they sense your emotional availability is gone, the world they built in their mind, where they could pull away yet feel safe because you were always there, begins collapsing. That collapse creates pressure, anxiety, something nameless yet inescapable. Confusion evolves into emotional friction, friction into restlessness, restlessness into fear. Not dramatic fear, not a panic attack, but a quiet, persistent fear that sits in their chest and whispers, "What if I actually lose them?" Avoidants aren't afraid of commitment. They're afraid of losing themselves, but losing you is different. Losing you doesn't threaten autonomy. It threatens emotional stability. They don't fear the relationship itself. They fear the vulnerability it exposes. Losing a connection that once felt safe pierces the part of them they've spent their life avoiding, the part that feels abandoned. When they realize you're moving on, their avoidance can no longer shield them. It exposes them. It forces confrontation with emotions they've suppressed for years. Even when they hide it well, pretending everything is normal, the confusion grows heavier, becoming something they don't have the tools to handle. You become the silent thought in the back of their mind, the question mark they can't erase, the story left unfinished, the absence that suddenly feels louder than your presence ever did. They don't share this. They don't show it externally. They don't run to you with apologies. But every avoidant reaches this point, the moment confusion cracks open the first layer of emotional awareness. Their system, built on distance and self-protection, registers that something fundamental has shifted because you stopped fighting for them. For the first time, they are unsure what to do next. When an avoidant realizes you've genuinely given up, the internal shift is among the most uncomfortable they've experienced. Most people don't understand that avoidants don't panic because they fear losing you. They panic because they lose the illusion of control over emotional distance. That illusion kept their nervous system calm. When you stop chasing, stop fixing, stop explaining, stop trying to understand, stop fighting for the connection, and allow silence to speak, it hits them in a way nothing else can. This is the beginning of a powerful shift. For the first time, the avoidant is forced into emotional awareness. They confront the reality that your effort, care, and consistency carried more emotional weight than they ever admitted. While you were investing, they didn't need to be vulnerable. They could remain guarded. But when you stop, when your energy shifts, when you remove yourself emotionally and mentally, not with anger or manipulation, but with quiet acceptance, it throws them into unfamiliar emotional terrain. Avoidants rely on emotional safety, created when someone else is the pursuer. That dynamic allows them to maintain distance without losing the relationship. Once you remove your effort, they lose both, the distance and the safety. Losing both is something they aren't prepared to navigate. Initially, confusion arises. They sense change but can't name it. You're not angry, cold, or punishing. You're simply not carrying the relationship anymore. Avoidants feel energy more than words. They notice the absence of your warmth, the quiet where reassurance used to exist. The emotional safety net they never acknowledged is gone. They stand in emotional silence they never anticipated. This confusion sparks introspection. Avoidants almost always find introspection uncomfortable. They begin asking questions they typically avoid. Why aren't you reaching out? Why aren't you responding like before? Did they misread your patience? Did they underestimate your breaking point? Beneath these questions lies a deeper one they resist confronting. Have they truly lost you? That realization unsettles them at the core, forcing an emotional reckoning that avoidance has long avoided. Did I lose someone who genuinely cared? Avoidance can handle conflict. They can manage intensity. They can handle emotional upset or tension. What they cannot handle is neutrality. Your detachment feels like indifference, and indifference is the one emotion their defenses were never built to withstand. They don't fear losing closeness. They fear losing relevance. They fear becoming insignificant. They fear the quiet acknowledgement that something they always assumed would be theirs is slipping away. The real shock comes during the second internal shift. They begin feeling the consequences of their own distancing. Avoidance creates space because they believe the connection will remain intact, no matter how far they pull away. They operate under subconscious arrogance. That time waits for them, and that you are always there, waiting too. They assume your heart is constant, your patience limitless, your love endlessly refillable. When you stop giving, stop initiating, stop sustaining the bond, that assumption fractures. Once that illusion shatters, they experience something rare, genuine, undeniable loss. Loss is the feeling they have spent their lives trying to avoid. This is why giving up shocks them, not because they suddenly become emotionally fluent, but because they must face the consequences of their avoidance. They realize the connection was never a one-sided burden. You weren't demanding more, you were supporting more. Your effort wasn't neediness, it was emotional generosity. Your communication wasn't pressure, it was clarity. Your presence wasn't overwhelming, it was stabilizing. When they recognize that you've given up, it forces accountability they never intended to face. They must reflect on their own behavior. Avoidants do not enjoy looking in that mirror. They are accustomed to feeling safe behind emotional boundaries, not exposed by silence. Your withdrawal removes the cushion they relied on and forces them to experience the weight of their own choices. But this shock slowly transforms into awareness. For the first time, they see your value in ways they never noticed when you were present. Perspective comes with distance. When someone is always there, always forgiving, always patient, their presence can feel stable, predictable, even mundane to an avoidant. But when someone who cared deeply stops, the absence becomes louder than the presence ever was. The avoidant begins recalling overlooked moments. The coffee you brought, the way you listened to their stress, the patience you showed during their shutdowns. They remember the emotional effort now impossible to replace. Because avoidants process feelings slowly, this realization grows quietly, steadily, inevitably. Your giving becomes a contrast. It shows them the weight of a connection without your stabilizing presence. It reveals that they weren't avoiding you. They were avoiding intimacy and vulnerability. Now that the person who made intimacy feel safe is gone, they are forced to confront emotions they've evaded for years. This is the part that shocks them most. They feel something, emptiness, not the solitude they once craved, but a hollow, echoing emptiness. They feel regret. They feel the absence of someone who understood them. They feel the consequences of walls built by avoidance. They expected giving up to trigger desperation, clinging, panic, or chasing. They didn't anticipate you choosing your peace, replacing effort with detachment, prioritizing yourself, or simply letting go. Avoidants don't fear loss until it becomes real. They don't fear distance until it's permanent. They don't fear silence until it becomes disconnection. And they don't fear you leaving until you actually do. This understanding confronts them with a truth they've avoided. You weren't too much. They weren't enough. Your withdrawal forces them to face that without relying on their usual emotional defenses. Deflection, withdrawal, denial, avoidance. Their reaction isn't anger, indifference, or relief. It's shock. Shock because they are feeling emotions they didn't expect. Shock is often the first step toward change. This is where the idea of the phantom X emerges. Avoidants idealize people after they are gone. But when you quit entirely, this mechanism activates immediately. They start rewriting history. The mental narrative that justified their distance, you were too much, demanding, overwhelming, begins to crumble. The story flips. They remember patience, understanding, and the safety you provided, even if they couldn't handle it at the time. Next comes a powerful realization. They misinterpreted you. Texts they considered irritating now feel like acts of care. Requests for time together now feel like love, not pressure. Avoidants reach this understanding through contrast, not conversation. They compare the emotional security you provided with the emptiness of distance. The absence becomes a mirror revealing the truth they avoided. They did care, they were attached, and losing you is painful. But the deepest layer of their regret is even more profound. They miss not just your presence, but the version of themselves they were with you. The relaxed, open, playful version who felt understood and safe. That version is gone because it only existed with you. You held the key to that part of their soul. When you leave, you take that key. Internally, the avoidant struggles. They don't want to chase. They don't want to admit attachment, and they resist vulnerability. But psychological pressure builds. Distance shifts from safety to punishment. They don't know if you want them, if you've moved on, or if reaching out would make them appear weak. This uncertainty terrifies them because avoidance requires emotional control to feel safe. In this new reality, they have none. They drift without a compass, and that feels far more frightening than intimacy ever did. So what do? They test the waters, but not dramatically. They rarely return with grand gestures, flowers, or long apologies. It's too risky. Instead, they act in small, calculated ways. They like old social media posts, comment on insignificant things, send neutral messages like, "Saw this and thought of you," or share a random song. They attempt light, safe interaction without exposing true feelings. Why? Because they fear rejection. Pouring their heart out and being rejected would devastate them. Sending subtle gestures, however, allows them to tell themselves it doesn't matter. They can pretend it's casual. These behaviors are deliberate, testing if the door is still open without risking emotional collapse. This is the shocking realization. Losing you was not the escape they expected. Instead, it's the wake-up call they didn't know they needed. Silence strips distraction away, and the relief they anticipated transforms into a quiet, heavy ache. They realize they cared more than they ever admitted. They recognize they felt safer with you than without you. They understand that the connection they shared with you isn't something that can be replaced or ignored. They realize that the person they pushed away might have been the one individual who could truly understand them on a level they've never experienced before. The truth is, avoidants don't chase those who cling to them. They chase the person who finally steps back. Because letting go removes emotional pressure. Letting go removes the noise. Letting go removes expectations. And in that space, the avoidant finally gains the clarity they were never able to access before. They can finally see you without fear. They can finally perceive the connection without feeling overwhelmed. They can finally see themselves without the walls they built to protect themselves. For the first time, they understand that your absence isn't a game you're playing, it's a standard you are setting. That is the moment they begin trying to earn their way back in. So if you are wondering whether your silence matters, whether your absence is noticed, whether stepping away has any impact at all, stop doubting yourself. It does. It is the most potent action you can take. But remember one essential truth. You are not doing this to manipulate anyone. You are doing it to honor yourself. The moment you walk away hoping they will follow, you are still waiting, and they can feel that. But when you step away because you refuse to settle for crumbs, the energy shifts. In honoring your own boundaries and worth, you force them to confront the reality they have been avoiding. You are not a guarantee. They are not entitled to you. You are a gift. You are not just an option. You are a choice. Once they recognize that gift is gone, once they understand the choice has been made for them, everything changes. Whether they return or not is no longer the point. If they come back, it will be to someone who knows their value and refuses to compromise it. If they don't return, you have already saved yourself from a lifetime of chasing someone unwilling to be caught. Either way, you emerge victorious. This isn't about punishment or making them regret. It's about reclaiming your own emotional power. Your decision to walk away sets the standard for the love and respect you will accept in your life. Your presence is no longer measured by their need, but by your own worth. Your absence communicates more than words ever could. Your choice to stop chasing shows them that love is not endless when given to those who fail to reciprocate. You are not here to fill the void they create. You are here to honor the life and energy you bring. And once they recognize that, the dynamic shifts entirely. The person who once took you for granted may now awaken to the reality of what they lost.